eventually you get absorbed in and you are Sonic.
Happy New Year, everybody. Welcome back to No Repeat, a podcast where we pick 3 songs every week with no repeats and no do-overs to create a perfect playlist for every occasion life throws at you. I'm Taylor Olmstead, and I'm joined by my co-hosts, Tyler Reed.
Oh, it's the new year? This is some wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff going on.
And Sean Evans.
Let's go.
Sean just says, let's go.
He's ready. Grip it and rip it. Well, this is our first episode of 2024, so naturally we're continuing our tradition of talking about 3 bands that we think that you should check out in 2024. We've done a lot of talking kind of broadly about where music is over the last couple episodes. If you haven't listened to our classic favorites and our Song of 2023 episodes, I definitely recommend going back and doing that. But this week we're looking at where music is going, where we think the trends are headed for the new year. So these are all artists that are relatively up and coming. They haven't been on a bunch of end of year lists. They're not household names yet, but we think they could be. And I was curious for you guys, because I get this question a lot from listeners and people who are discovering the podcast. Where do you find these bands? How do you find new bands that seemingly no one around you has heard of?
I'm also asking the same question. Sean, how are you doing it?
Well, unlike you, we talked about this in the last time. I do the 10-second test. I just go. Just don't like it, move on. That's it.
Blame
and you
others.
just let Spotify like endlessly recommend you things?
Yeah.
There you go.
Or I'll listen for when we're out someplace at dinner, or if I'm in the car with somebody or something. I'll Shazam a song that I like and then let it go on that. Because it might be something that I'd never, a genre that I wouldn't normally have listened to, and then I'll just use that as a springboard onto some new stuff.
I'm doing that more and more. I've been really leaning into that infinite play feature and just letting the algorithm decide what to do, which has been interesting. I'm definitely finding stuff that I didn't know about through that. But with this episode, once again this year, I went to the blogosphere and looked at what other music critics and music commentators are listening to and pointing out for next year. And I once again have to tip my hat to Stereogum, whose list of best new artists this time around was really well compiled and exhaustive, covering all sorts of genres. And I listened to at least one song from every artist on their list and came away with a lot of bands that I really liked and had a hard time narrowing it down. But I wanted to pick something that I felt like was a sound that we could expect to go somewhere next year, rather than just a cool song. I think this band and bands like them have real opportunity in the coming year, and that's kind of how I narrowed it. But what about you guys? How did you get it down to just one song?
I feel like this one's always a big challenge for me every year, where it's I feel like I end up listening to a bunch of new things that I'm excited about, but I probably end up choosing for a challenge, and I really should just hold on to it. And it's hard to pick the one, and then for some reason I feel like when you're trying to find wrap ups, it feels like it's very hard to find people that understand the challenge. You would imagine that you say every year new artists put out their debut album. What are the best ones? And that feels, why is that so hard to find? It's like, I feel like so many lists are like, well, this one came out in like 2022, you know, like, oh, we're interested in this artist. Their album came out last year, but we're interested to see what they do in 2023. It's like, they don't have any plans to do anything in that year. They might do something. It's like, that doesn't count. There's a whole year. You know, and so that's like mostly like my big gripe with like sort of like the news coverage in that regard, and even like just typing into Spotify or anywhere, it just feels impossible. But as Taylor said, sort of like there, you know, the news outlets always usually do a pretty good job of wrapping them up. Taylor had already put in his pick when I put in my initial one, and then I realized it was the same band, and I was like, well, ding dang. Wow, wow, bing bang, ooh, ah, ah. Now I gotta find something else, because that band, the band that he picked is like pretty sick. So I had to pick up I had to go for a shot from the hip. But yeah, so I mean, like, how do you end up choosing? I mean, just like, I mean, you're just trying to trend forecast as best you can. Like, what are people excited about? What do people want to hear more of? Like, I feel like, sort of like in our previous episode, I was talking about how rock and roll is back, but I feel like that's back. But I also feel like there's probably also a sense of, there's like a sort of like a change in like lyrical sort of like content. I feel like people are being a little bit more tongue in cheek, a little bit more like, I feel like. Last year, Muna put out like an album that I felt like was really compelling, really interesting, and had very sort of like progressive lyrics in sort of like the, you know, what the subject matter that it dealt with, and sort of like the comfortable subject matter of it. And so I love that album, but it just barely missed the mark for me for getting it to be as like one of my favorites of the year. So I feel like that sort of like electro pop that sort of like harkens back to the past, I feel like is generally going to be, I feel like is a trend that will continue to kind of go into the future a little bit more.
Sean, how did you narrow it down?
I thought that the song that I picked, the artist was really unique in how she like composed her song. And I thought it played on a lot of themes that I feel like are kind of prevalent in music that's not what I discovered to be the folk revolution. I guess it has been a minute, so that makes sense. But I feel like it was on the cusp of the something new and exciting that might be happening in the alternative category. I feel like that definition is being like revamped a little bit.
Yeah, that's a good point. I do feel like alternative and indie are really kind of stretching into new shapes this year and next year. Like, I think the landscape of artists that we consider like alt rock or alternative this time next year is going to be way different even than what it is now.
Yeah. I feel like an example of that feels like Olivia Rodrigo. I feel like it's kind of like someone who's been kind of is like a big name person in like sort of like a more mainstream sense, but is making music that feels a little bit more alternative, a little more underground. Feels like, or at least like has more of like a DIY approach to it than what we would consider like maybe like an Ariana Grande, et cetera, right? That's almost like a previous like era of sort of like the pop artist kind of making stuff.
Yeah, I think that's a really good comparison. I would also look at people like Tizo Touchdown and Lil Yachty, who are coming into this space from the hip-hop space and really pushing the limits of where those genres can meet and how can you move an audience from one genre to another, or can you, for that matter. I think there's going to be a lot more of these like huge genre jumps for artists in the next couple of years, just because it seems like listeners are more willing to take those risks. And speaking of risks, I think we should start with Sean's song. And that's not a drag on your song. I think when we talk about like, do genres mean anything anymore? How do you like meld genres together to make something new? Like, this song is doing something that I have not heard before, and so I think it's a really good forward-looking piece.
Okay, cool. All right, so this week I chose Monk by Alice Longyugao. Okay, so this is just like a genre blender kind of thing that picks up on a lot of the raw energy that I feel happening amongst different internet areas. And I think that initially when I heard it, I was like, wow, this is absolutely bizarre. Like even gimmicky in a way. But then the more that I listened to it, the more I thought, like, she's doing something that's interesting here in terms of capturing energies of different things and putting things together in a meaningful way that creates, I think, a really good structure that's memorable and memey, but not, it won't be defined as being just me music all the time. And I think that there's, I don't know, it feels a lot more like written by somebody who has listened to things and has got their finger on the pulse of things than just being a kooky meme lord kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that's a really good call out. Like, she clearly listens to a really diverse array of music and wants to bring it all together in hers. And like, you could pull each of these apart and make, 3 different songs at least out of the component pieces here. But jamming them all together, it is at first a little alarming and jarring. But the more you listen to it and when you read the lyrics and get into the feeling of it, it's supposed to be that way. Like, the song is about kind of the terrifying, multi-pronged assault on the senses that is life in the 2020s. And I really like how she incorporates so many different cultural references, so many different musical references into making that point. And it also has this kind of like Riot Girl-esque energy of like, she doesn't have perfect on-pitch vocals, and she makes comments in the song about not having a perfect American accent and not having the stereotypical English voice. And I feel like just leaning into these things that might have been considered deal breakers in the perfect pop machine of 20 years ago, now it's like this rebellious act, like taken to a whole other space where it's like, is this a metal song? Is this a free jazz song? Is this a hyperpop song? Like, it's all of those things, because it's like, that's what she wanted to do, and she's just gonna do it. Mm-hmm. And there's not really anybody that can stop her.
You know what, Sean? Hell yeah. I think this is sort of maybe what I was commenting on in like sort of my preamble, where it feels like there's a sort of like almost like a reverence and sort of like to the lyrical content in the way. And I feel like sort of like in the same way, like sort of like the punk space feels like it's kind of like having an interesting sort of like morphing. Like I'm trying to think of other artists that sort of like approach the like sort of like their lyrics in like this way that feels very like I'm just going to say exactly how I feel and sort of like almost like a slam poetry kind of way. Like, and I feel like there are some people who are doing sort of that sort of sound in that in sort of like this general space. But I mean, like, it's cool. I mean, have you listened to any of their other stuff?
No, not. I haven't really. I haven't had time to.
You said you listened to this and you're like, past the 10-second test, past the 20-second test, 30-second, just kept going.
Yeah.
I would be curious what a full album of this sounds like. Like, because I'm sure this isn't going to be like wash, rinse, repeat of basically the song, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I like that you're right that I feel like kind of what we're saying is that it feels like it does kind of mash a little bit of genres into a blender, and I feel like that kind of makes it palatable in a bunch of different ways, because I feel like if it was just the pure screaming of just the like, there's definitely like segments of this that like in a vacuum you're like, I can't listen to a whole song of this, but then it like kind of consistently like sort of like surprises you into like a new sort of sound, and I think that's nice. But yeah, I feel like this will probably not reach the mainstream in like a super huge way, but I can see like this sort of like there being a subtle like reflection in sort of like the alternative spaces.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I feel like all three of our songs are probably songs that will never reach the mainstream in a meaningful way, but are precursors to the music that will catch on. I feel like people that are listening to music, people that are listening to music are probably listening to this because these are people that listen to music.
Yeah, I agree with you there. It's a great pick. What do you think, Tyler? You or me next?
You could go ahead. I feel like mine's the most pop centric, so we got to go down the gradient.
All right, sounds good. This week I chose Overtime by Homefront. I was just so gripped by this band the instant I heard them. I think they are doing the post-punk revival that has been bubbling under the surface for a while now. It really kind of broke and became a big deal this year, I think. Like, a lot of great albums. The Geese album, the Shame album, a handful of others, but they all kind of lean on the heavier side of post-punk, and so it was really refreshing to get this, which is on the softer, poppier side. It's more Smiths, it's more Cure, even a little bit like Flock of Seagulls, maybe, but it has that like aggression that the early like goth rock had that I really, really like. Like, it just feels so dark and powerful. And then the chorus is like this big, like almost new romantic kind of like synth rock vibe. It has a little bit of Future Islands going on in there. Like, you know, this song simultaneously feels like it could have come out in 1988 or today. And I think that's what makes it so cool. Like, I really have always loved this sound. I'm glad to hear it come back. And I think that they are doing it in a way that doesn't feel too much like wearing your influences on your sleeve. Like, they're bringing enough things together to make something just a little bit new, just a little bit different. And I think the TikTok crowd is going to love this kind of aesthetic, even if it's not necessarily this band. Like, I think these 80s new wave synths are really going to make a comeback in the next year and a half.
It kind of reminds me of the Cloud Nothings doing this 80s thing. And it's like so 80s that I just feel like it's... I don't know if somebody that I'm listening to in 7 years goes, you know, one of the most underrated albums was like underrated bands that came out of my hometown, Homefront. They were doing the thing. It was great. I feel like they're going to be a fantastic opening act for somebody, but I don't know if I see them going on like festival tours, because it almost sounds too good. It's like a case study.
I could see that.
Like, I love the sound. They figured it out. Like, but it feels like an academic exercise.
So the song that I had picked, or I had wanted to pick, was Homefront, or was Nation. And I feel
that
like
was
that
my
one,
second choice.
I felt like that one had a little bit more bite to it. I feel like it did a little bit more. I feel like it added a little extra, like, sort of like tooth to sort of like, so like a pretty, otherwise pretty tame sort of like song. I feel like it adds just a little bit more.
Yeah. I did not expect from hearing that song for Nation to be hardcore.
Yeah.
This is the problem that we have with this show, where we listen to one song and then we have to make a judgment about it. And if you're like me and you're supposed to blame artists, and you really put your foot in your mouth sometimes.
That was my challenge with this album in general, is like, it's all different 80s sounds. And some songs are more goth rocky or more synth rocky. Some songs have a hardcore element. Like, there's a lot going on this record. So I get how Tyler gravitated to the more hardcore one, and I gravitated to the more new wavy pop one. But the fact that these sit side by side on the same record, I think, is what makes this band cool.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, is this gonna be like Sean was gonna say? It's like, it's gonna be like my most favorite band of all time. I mean, maybe, I don't know. It depends how they keep going. I think what does interest me though is that I feel like we go back to like our adolescence and like cite like Wolfmother as like a band that was like aping a sound and then just doing nothing with it, just never like expanding it and never like going anywhere with it. But like, that first album is still sick. You're like, you still like, I'll still spin that album. That's cool. And like, you know, some people manage to navigate it pretty successfully, and they manage to do something different. They manage to do something cool, and sometimes they don't. They just kind of, you're like, they one-tricked it and they did the best they could. But I mean, like, I'm interested, like, because I like found them like today and you had already picked them, I didn't dig in too deep into this album. How far did you get into this album though, Taylor?
Oh, I've listened to it probably 5 or 6 times in the last week.
So like,
I'm obsessed
good.
with it. Yeah, it's really good. It's really good front to back.
Yeah, so I mean, like, and also just make it a good album. I mean, I'm gonna check out the whole album, just because I feel like between these two songs, they feel like like you said, they cross a lot of boundaries, a lot of different sort of sounds. And I mean, regardless, I think it is cool to like, I think this does enough for me that I'm like super into it, and I just am more of like, I hope it does well. And I also feel like just in general, I feel like people are sort of almost looking for that sort of like vintage sound just to come back, and people just to make more of it. And I think that's also okay.
All right, well, that just leaves you, Tyler. What did you bring us?
All right, this week I chose Pink Pony Club by Chappell Roan.
She sees her baby girl, I know she's gonna scream, God, what have you done? You're a pink pony girl, and you dance at the club, oh mama. on the stage in my heels. It's where I belong, down at the Pink Pony Club. I'm gonna keep on dancing at the Pink Pony Club. I'm gonna keep on dancing down in West Hollywood. I'm gonna keep on.
So she been did the game for a little bit. I had actually heard this song in particular last year, but she had just kind of like eventually compiled all of her stuff together and finally put out an album this year. I haven't given the full album quite a listen yet, but I've listened to a few tracks, and it's enough to give me a taste to say that, like, hey, I think this is cool and I think this is interesting. I think just at the base level, they have just iconic of enough of a voice and like have interesting enough like perspective and lyrical content to value being sort of like in the girl club, you know, like just like the pop, like the alt pop sort of like spectrum. I think and like I was kind of saying, I feel like Muna was also sort of like a similar sort of like queer adjacent sort of like act that was kind of like just kind of really kind of exploring the space and just kind of be like, there's not enough people talking about gay shit, you know, like they're just saying what, you know, like they're just really just sort of like expressing who they are in a very real and confident way. And they're like, and I just think that's really cool. Just that I feel like we're at a point where it feels like they feel able to express that in a true way. This song, however, is about a girl wanting to work at a drag club, which is also cool, also fun and neat. But I just think this song is just really dynamic, sort of in its composition. I think sort of when it gets to the chorus, I think it just has like a really cool sort of synth, like almost like synth drop a little bit. It just feels huge, and I just think her voice is just lovely. And is she gonna go off into the stars? Maybe. Is she probably gonna be in every gay club in America? Absolutely.
Yeah, I first heard of Chappell Roan when she was talked up on Las Culturistas with Matt Rogers and Bowen Yang. Matt got to go to an early like album preview of this and just raved about it, and he loves her live show and says that she's like Gaga level production on stage, like outfits and looks and the choreography and the whole package. So I'm really excited to see where she goes. I gave the album 1 or 2 listens. I found it kind of uneven, but there are songs on it that are really, really impressive. This is one of them. Pink Pony Club, I think, is a great piece. The ballad Coffee is truly heart-wrenching. It's one of my favorite pieces of songwriting this year. So I'm glad that we get a chance to kind of shine a light on Chappell, because I think she's going places. Like you said, is she going to be, you know, packing arenas? Probably not, but I mean, these songs will definitely be playing in the gay bars next year, and I don't know. I could see her doing some movie soundtracks, getting some opening. Like, imagine her opening for Gaga. Like, I think that could happen.
That very, very likely could happen. And you just got to have the right people to see it, right? And that makes the big difference.
Yeah, and she's bringing new elements into it. She's got like hair metal guitars on this song. There's some of the songs on this album are real goofy, but
yeah,
every one of them is very opinionated and has a very unique thing going on, and I like that about her. I think she knows what she wants to do, and it's impressive.
I see it. I agree with everything that you said. I like that it's called Pink Pony Club too. I think this is a cute name for a song. Actually, Hot to Go just came on right after this.
Mm-hmm.
It's not bad. I feel the Gaga vibes. I feel the warm-up vibes. I think there's something here. I think you're onto an artist that will be pretty prevalent here pretty soon.
Yeah, she needs like one more really big single.
Yeah. Red Wine Supernova.
It's a great track.
TikTok girlies, I'm sure, will love her if they haven't already.
All right. Well, with that, speaking of artists to watch out for, Is anybody watching out for us? At 71DPI is. They just put in an artist, which is Geese.
He says geese.
Geese. He says geese.
He says geese. He says they, like Taylor was kind of saying in the previous episode, is sort of like a reinvention of their brand with the new album. That's why I picked it.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what they do.
Oh, and with that, other artists that you may have wanted to put on here but didn't quite get on here.
Oh man, I had a bunch. I'm gonna just give you the best ones. There's a band called Cusp that was on the Stereogum list. They're like, I guess Tyler would call them maybe bubble grunge. I think they're not quite as poppy as that. They seem very Sean. Woman frontage, like shoegaze grunge fusion. It's really cool. Irish, like punk rock band called Sprints. I really like their song Literary Mind. It has a real wet leg feeling to it. Real goofy like that. And then a band that I had heard of when their first record came out in 2022, and then I got served up the first single for their new album that's coming out in early 2024. It's Yard Act, who are in that stable of like LCD Sound System, Idols, Sleaford Mods, like Parquet Courts, that kind of nerdy post-punk dance rock. If that's your jam, I think this new Yard Act album is going to be a big one for that scene.
Taylor and I read the same article, so.
The hive mind thinks together. I would say just keep listening to the show. I kind of shot from the hip on this one because this song really stuck out to me as something that was unique. Honestly, just keep submitting challenges that are like this. Not Artist of the Year, but like artists that are reinventing their genre, or people that have come out with a new sound in there, blah, 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 or, you know. We can continue to do this kind of stuff because I like it, or, you know. We haven't done like a new genre creation in a minute. I feel like those are particularly very stimulating episodes. Like, and I don't know, this might be some advice too. If you don't already enjoy a core lifestyle, maybe your New Year's resolution for 2024 should be doing a core lifestyle, you know.
Explain what you mean by that.
Okay, so like today, I tried dadcore. I was like, I'm going to dress dadcore. So I had on my Sperry's, my topsiders, with my relaxed fit jeans, and I put on my squall jacket from Land's End, and I wore a Bengals flat bill cap from like the 1990s. And like I went to Costco and I felt like I was living my best life. I was like, this is not how I could dress to work, but this dadcore it's fun to do. It's fun to dress like a dad.
Hey, you know what? You were comfortable though.
Like a little costumey. Yeah. Well, Tyler's been doing it. He's doing his like his Japanese streetcore thing. I saw his posted outfit the other day. That's what I mean. Just go and find that core, and if not, just make it up. I know there's like a bunch of cores that are on, you know, makeup Instagram.
I bought some bare-legged pants.
Bare-legged pants?
Barrel-legged pants.
Oh, barrel-legged. I thought you said bare-legged. I was like, what is that? How do you have a bare-legged? I liked them. They looked great.
No, it wasn't those ones. They're acid wash.
Oh, those are
bare-legged.
different.
Don't do it.
Well, Tyler, if people want to get fashion advice from you, where can they get it?
Hey, everybody. You should just like go to London in wintertime, because you can find pretty good sweaters for like $20 just on like the side of a road. The girl math is that you save your money all year to just go there. Anyway, you can find my design illustration work at rudepets.club. As always, you can find me on socials at Rude Pets Club on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter.
Sean, if people want lifestyle advice from you, where can they get it?
Oh, hell yeah. You can find me on Instagram at TellySean, and Tyler and I have decided that we're going to release a new fashion and lifestyle podcast. Probably called Tyler and Sean. Yeah, that's it. Pink Pony Club. That's our resolution.
There you go. Well, if you want to keep in touch with me and all my side projects, you can find me on the socials at TC Olmstead. All these songs will be on the official No Repeat podcast playlist on Apple Music and Spotify. You're guaranteed to find a band you've never heard of on there somewhere. And we'll be back here in a week or so with some more new music for you on No Repeat.